Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. My name is Naimisharanya. I'm a disciple of His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu. So before we start, we'd like to take a sankalpa, a prayer, that we are going to be entering deep into the topics of how Vidura is going to be discussing topics of transcendence with Maitreya, and his mind is going to be attached to Krishna's lotus feet. In the same way, as we read and hear this transcendental pastime, we are praying to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji that our minds are also attached to his lotus feet. Hare Krishna. So before we start, we'll do Jai Radha Madhav. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari O Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari O Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Jaya Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Oh Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Oh Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Prabhupada ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvai Namaha. So we are going to continue our reading today from the third canto, chapter number 5, which is titled Vidura Talks with Maitreya. So far the context of what we are reading is Vidura, who has left Hastinapur, who has been told to leave Hastinapur by Duryodhan, is on a pilgrimage. And he started his pilgrimage before the Kurukshetra war. So while he was walking and doing his pilgrimage, at that time the Kurukshetra war was happening. And during his pilgrimage, he comes to the bank of Yamuna, where he met. Who did he meet at the bank of Yamuna? Uddhava. Yes, he meets Uddhava, and there he asks Uddhava some questions, and Uddhava answers those questions. Does anybody remember what questions he asked Uddhava? Someone else. Do we have a mic, Prabhu? We don't have a mic, okay. Yeah, so he was very curious. He wanted to know what was happening with his family, what was happening with the Yadus, right? So he asks all those questions, and predominantly he was wanting to know about Krishna, right? He wanted to know about Krishna. Where is Krishna? And as soon as he asked that question to Uddhava, what happened to Uddhava? He was bewildered, yes. He went into ecstasy, right? We read about that verse where he actually went into the spiritual realm, right? He went into the spiritual world. And that was because he had his Siddha Deha, right? So when he came back, Uddhava answered all those questions, and then he also shared what happened to all the relatives, right? And then when Vidura wanted to ask more questions, especially about the transcendental topics about Lord Sri Krishna, Uddhava explained that Maitreya Muni is just close by, and he redirected him to Maitreya because Uddhava was instructed by Krishna to go to Badrikashram, yes. And when he goes to Badrikashram, he was supposed to meditate for really long because he was the only one who could actually share this knowledge with everyone. And at Badrikashram, he is going to meet somebody. Does anybody know who he's going to meet? Narayan Rishi, yes, Narayan Rishi. And that is an incarnation of Krishna himself. So, now Vidura meets Uddhava, he speaks to him, and then he is asked to go to meet Maitreya. So he again, continues his walk, and he meets Maitreya at the bank of the Ganges. And this is where we now start to understand what were the talks between Vidura and Maitreya. And most of the Srimad Bhagavatam is actually these talks between Vidura and Maitreya. So it's a very important section. So today we are going to be reading text number 1 through 16, and we are going to deep dive in text number 11. And the theme of our discussion today is the importance of Krishna Katha. And there are a few points which we're going to be discussing. One is, why is Krishna Katha so important? What we're doing right now in listening, why is this important? The second question which we're going to try to answer is, what is Krishna Katha? Third is, what are the instructions once we hear the Krishna Katha? What are our instructions? So those are three things which we're going to try to answer. Why is Krishna Katha so important? What is Krishna Katha? And once we receive this instruction, what do we need to do with that? So we're going to start with text number 1. If somebody can read the translation, please. So Vidura, he is actually a very close associate of Krishna. Does anybody know who was Vidura before he came down in this pastime? Yamaraj, yes. So Yamaraj, and he was a very, very close associate of Krishna. So he was already on a transcendental platform. So he is already an unalloyed devotee of Krishna. And an unalloyed devotee of Krishna, he has surpassed all the fallible nature of this material world, right? And the stage of life in which Vidura was is called the Achyuta Bhava Siddha stage, or perfection by the dint of devotional service. So as he was walking, he reaches the bank of the Ganges and he meets Maitreya. Maitreya is sitting in a solitary place at Haridwar, which is a very, very religious and pious place in India. Okay, text number 2. Somebody else. So here we see that Vidura asked Maitreya some common questions, right? The common question was that, oh great sage, in this world everybody is engaged in some fruitive activity. And our whole purpose is to try to attain some happiness. However, are we happy? No, we're not. So one neither finds satisfaction nor mitigation of distress, right? Our distress seems to just keep increasing. So a question arises that when Vidura had already discussed with Uddhava about the transcendental topics, and Uddhava said that now you can go to Maitreya to ask these transcendental topics, Why did he ask these common questions? And the reason is because of Vidura's humility. And he wanted to ask these questions for the purpose of all of us, the common man and woman. A common man, we cannot understand the Lord, and it's very difficult for us to understand that. So the first thing what we do is we first understand the real position of our life, and we understand that we are not the soul, but we are the body. So he started with those questions, with Maitreya. Okay, text number 3. So now he is glorifying Maitreya. He's glorifying Maitreya, and he's explaining, he's saying that great souls travel on the earth on behalf of the Lord for one purpose and one purpose only, which is to show compassion to the fallen souls. How do they show compassion to the fallen souls? What do you think? Give a try. So here Vidura is telling Maitreya that, such philanthropic souls are traveling on the earth on behalf of Krishna to show compassion to the fallen souls. Yeah, teach them, share this knowledge, share this gift, right? Okay, text number 4. So now he is actually asking a prayer, right? He is praying to Maitreya that, "O great sage, please give me that transcendental instruction. Give me the instruction on transcendental devotional service so that the person who's sitting in my heart, that person can actually impart knowledge from within my heart." Right? And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Tesham satata yuktanam bhajata priti purvakam." Only when the Lord is satisfied with devotional service of the devotee does he actually impart knowledge from within. So Krishna is called the Chaitya Guru. And when Krishna is actually satisfied, he then from within imparts that knowledge. He also says that he carries something and he preserves something. What does he carry? Yes. Yes, perfect, yes. He carries what we lack and he preserves what we have. So what do we have? Huh? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah? Yes? Yes, exactly. So whatever we have, to your point, he preserves that. And he carries what we lack. What do we lack? Knowledge, love, right, for Krishna. So, and he does that when we have pleased him, right? So from within he imparts that knowledge to us. And how does he impart that? This is how Maitreya is explaining that he who is situated within the heart, once you give me the instruction on transcendental devotional service, that's when he gets pleased, right? By the mercy of the Guru. Do you have a question? Yes. Yeah, we do. So the example given is of a drop of water compared to that with a river or an ocean. So a drop of water has the same quality as the water which is in the river or the ocean. However, it's minute. So same way we are, like you said, parts and parcels of Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. we are just parts and parcels. And we have the same quality, but in minute quantity. So if we do, then what happened, right? So when we come down to this material realm, we get so riveted to this body. We start to consider ourselves this body. We forget that we are actually the true spirit spark, Satchit Ananda. And we get covered. What do we get covered by? Yes, all the anarthas, right? What are some of the anarthas we know? Or we have? Lust, anger, greed, candy bars, envy, right? So many things are covering us, right? So how do we get rid of all these impurities? Yes, exactly. By transcendental devotional service. By practicing transcendental devotional service, slowly, by practice, gradually, all these impurities are cleansed, right? So coming back to your point that yes, we are parts and parcels of Krishna, however, we have minute quantities. Okay, text number 5. Yes, so now Vidura is asking about the cosmic manifestation. How was the cosmic manifestation formed? And the reason he asks this question is, why do you think he asked this question? Yes. Yes, exactly. So he's first trying to establish who is Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is independent of this material manifestation. Yes, Mataji. Where am I? Yeah. Yeah, and that is the humility of Vidura, because Vidura is already at a transcendental level, yet he asks this question to Maitreya, because he has humility and he has compassion for all of us. So Vidura wants Maitreya to speak about how this cosmic manifestation came about. How did it manifest? He wants Vidura to speak about the 3 plenary expansions of Krishna, which are Shirodakshaya Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and yeah, so we have Karanodakshaya Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Shirodakshaya Vishnu, right? So 3 different expansions of Krishna. He also wants to establish that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is not bound by these material modes, and he doesn't get influenced by these modes, right? He also wants to ensure that whenever there is a living being on this earth, the subsistence is immediately arranged by the Lord. The Lord takes care of every living entity, right? We've seen around us all the plants, the bees, the animals, they're all taken care by Krishna, right? So he wants to establish that piece as well. Text number 6. Somebody like to read? So here we again see that he's establishing that there's nothing but the Lord, and Krishna is one without a second, right? it is all emanating from Krishna. We're all coming from Krishna. Text number 7. You may narrate also about the auspicious characteristics of the Lord in his different incarnations for the welfare of the twice born, the cows, and the demigods. Our minds are never satisfied completely, although we continuously hear of his transcendental activities. So here, Vidura is now wanting Maitreya to speak about the twice born. The twice born are all the devotees who have actually taken initiation by a spiritual master. Just by taking birth from our parents, we are still in the illusory nature. We think that this is my body, this is my family, but the person who is twice born, he understands that I'm actually a spirit spark. I'm an infinitesimal being here. And only by the mercy of my spiritual master, I can understand who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship to Krishna. He also wants to speak about the cows and how pious the cows are. He also wants Maitreya to speak about the demigods. And he also says that the minds are never satisfied. He wants to continuously hear about the transcendental activities of Krishna. So these are not material, mundane activities, right? When we try to read a mundane book or a magazine or a newspaper, we can't keep reading it again and again, right? We get bored after some time. Or if you're watching TikTok, right? Or a reel, you can't watch the same thing again and again. It gets boring. However, when we read transcendental topics like the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, every time you read it, we actually realize something new. It feels like Krishna is actually speaking to us, right? Our relationship with the Shastra increases. And this is what Vidura is telling Maitreya, that although we continuously hear of his transcendental activities, our minds are actually never satisfied. Text number 8. The Supreme King of all kings has created different planets and places of habitation where living entities are situated in terms of modes of nature and work. And he has created their different kings and rulers. Text 9. O chief amongst the Brahmanas, please also describe how Narayan, the creator of the universe and the self-sufficient Lord, has differently created the natures, activities, forms, features, and names of the different living creatures. 10. O my Lord, I have repeatedly heard about these higher and lower statuses of human society from the mouth of Vyasadeva, and I am quite satiated with all these lesser subject matters and their happiness. They have not satisfied me with the nectar of topics about Krishna. So here we see that Vidura, he is actually heard from the mouth of Vyasadeva. So what is the relationship of Vidura with Vyasadeva? Son, right? So Vidura is actually the son of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is his real father. So as he was walking, he, on his pilgrimage, he actually met Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva, it seems, like spoke to him directly about Mahabharata, about different topics. However, after hearing from these different topics, he was satiated. These lesser subject matters didn't give him too much happiness. Why do you think that was? He heard from Vyasadeva, but still these topics didn't give him happiness. Yes? Yes, because they were not about Krishna. And we see the example that the author himself, Vyasadeva, even though he wrote and compiled the Vedas, he compiled the Mahabharata, yet he was not satisfied. And he was then instructed by his spiritual master, Narad Muni, that you will be satisfied when you actually write about the transcendental topics of Krishna. And that's when he wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam. Same way we see here that Vidura, he was not completely satisfied. Even though he heard from Vyasadev's own mouth about the Mahabharata and all the other lesser subject matters. So here, an important point we should make is that we are not trying to say that one Shastra is lesser than the other, right? What we are trying to explain is the Mahabharata was written for a particular purpose. And the purpose is to attract the common man who doesn't have any attraction to Krishna to be attracted, so then they can hear about Bhagavad Gita, which is actually the essence of Mahabharata. Many times we see that people are so attracted by different things, right? Like politics or by fights or by accidents, right? If there's an accident on the road, immediately we see that everybody slowed down because they want to see. Even traffic on the other side slows down, right? Because they're interested to see what's going on. Or if there's a fight, there's a crowd which immediately comes about. So topics which are of less importance, right? People gravitate towards that. And Vyasadeva, he tried by Mahabharata to attract all these different people so they can actually hear Bhagavad Gita. Text number 11. Who in human society can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talks of the Lord, whose lotus feet are the sum total of all places of pilgrimage, and who is worshipped by great sages and devotees? Such topics can cut off one's bondage to family affection simply by entering the holes of one's ears. So now we are going to discuss the first question, which is, what is Krishna Katha? Right? So Vidura, by his questions to Maitreya, has established that he had heard about Mahabharata. However, that was not satisfactory. He wants to hear about, like you said, topics about Krishna. And that is where Krishna Katha comes into play. So there are two Krishna Katha. One is which is spoken by Krishna, and one is which is about Krishna. What is spoken by Krishna was the Bhagavad Gita, which Krishna spoke to Arjuna on the battlefield. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is about the glories of Krishna, the glories, the pastimes, the qualities of Lord Shri Krishna. We should understand that when we are hearing about from Krishna or hearing about the glories of Krishna, we are actually in front of him. We are face to face. Just like how Arjuna was in face to face with Krishna on the battlefield, similarly, when we hear topics of Krishna Katha, we are actually face to face with Krishna. So we'll read the purport. We'll go a little deeper into text number 11. Would somebody like to read the purport? Would you like to read the purport? So here we are understanding that we have to make our activities transcendental. Worldly men are attracted to all these different lower modes. However, we need to understand that everything actually belongs to Krishna. Everything. It's not like we should have two pockets, one for me and one for Krishna. Everything is actually Krishna's. Everything is coming from Krishna. And we have to change that consciousness. And how do we do that? We can do that by transcendental loving service and by regulation. Right? If we actually have some attraction to material desires, we can regulate those desires. We try to make our activities transcendental activities. Does that mean we give up everything? No. We don't give up everything. We actually try to utilize everything for Krishna's service. It doesn't mean that we need to give up, our situations we are in and go to the forest and meditate. No. That is not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness, like in Arjuna's case, before he was spoken, the Bhagavad Gita, he had to fight. And after he was spoken the Bhagavad Gita, he still fought. However, what changed was the consciousness in which he performed his activity. So same way, we need to change the consciousness in which we do our activities. So our goal is actually to reach Krishna. And preaching Krishna Katha is the greatest missionary activity, which Srila Prabhupada is now going to explain in the purport. So the mundane qualities do not allow a living entity to understand his real position. The qualities of both ignorance and passion strongly bind one to the illusory bodily conception of the self. The best among the fools who are thus deluded are those who engage in altruistic activities under the spell of the material modes of passion. Bhagavad Gita, which is direct Krishna Katha, gives humanity the elementary lesson that the body is perishable and the consciousness which is spread throughout the body is imperishable. Excuse me. The conscious being, the imperishable self, is eternally existent and cannot be killed under any circumstances, even after the dissolution of the body. So what is the conscious being? That is the spirit spark. Anyone who misunderstands this perishable body to be the self and who works for it in the name of sociology, politics, philanthropy, altruism, nationalism or internationalism under the false plea of the bodily conception of life is certainly a fool and does not know the implications of reality and unreality. Oh, thank you so much, Prabhu. Some of them are above the modes of ignorance and passion and are situated in the mode of goodness. But mundane goodness is always contaminated by tinges of ignorance and passion. Mundane goodness can enlighten one that the body and the self are different, and one in goodness is concerned with the self and not the body. But due to being contaminated, those in mundane goodness cannot understand the real nature of the self as a person. So you see what happened here? So here, Srila Prabhupada explained the difference between mundane goodness, just being in the mode of goodness, versus somebody who has risen above the mode of goodness. So somebody who is just in the mode of goodness, they understand that the body and the self are different. However, because they are still contaminated, they cannot understand the real nature of the self. But a transcendental person who has gone above the mode of goodness, that person can actually understand, the real nature of the self. And that can happen only by transcendental knowledge. So their impersonal conception of the self as distinct from the body keeps them in the mode of goodness within material nature, unless they're attracted to Krishna Katha. So we come back to our point that why is Krishna Katha so important? Why is it important? Because a person who is just in the mode of goodness, they will never be able to understand. What will they not be able to understand? The real nature of the self. Thank you. The real nature of the self. And what is the real nature of the self? Jivera Sarupai Nitya Krishna Das. Right? I am an eternal servant of Krishna. We don't realize that. We can only realize that how? When we are attracted to Krishna Katha. And what did we discuss? What is Krishna Katha, dear devotees? The Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna Katha, the Bhagavad Gita is what was spoken by Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is, we're talking about the qualities, the form, the pastimes of Krishna. When we actually hear Krishna Katha, now Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna Katha is the only remedy for all people of the world. Why? Because it can situate one in pure consciousness of the self and liberate one from material bondage. To preach Krishna Katha all over the world, as recommended by Lord Chaitanya, is the greatest missionary activity, and all sensible men and women of the world may join in this great movement started by Lord Chaitanya. So, here we see Srila Prabhupada's instruction to us. And what was his instruction and what was Lord Chaitanya's instruction? That we have to preach, we have to share this gift, what we have received, to everyone. And why is it so important? Because everybody needs to realize that we are a spirit spark. We have to cut all these material bondages what we have, right? So there were three things what we discussed today. One was, what is Krishna Katha? The second is, why is it so important? And why Vidura wanted to hear Krishna Katha from Maitreya? Why was he not satisfied when he had actually heard from Vyasadeva, his real father? And third, what is our instruction? Once we receive Krishna Katha, what do we need to do? So we'll stop here and we'll try to take some reflections. Anything which stuck to you today? Yes. 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 So Vyasadeva, he is actually the father of all three. Who are three? We know Vidura, right? He was also the father of Dhritarashtra and Pandu. So the story is that Bhishma Dev, he wanted to get all the queens he had actually got for his brothers' sons, but they weren't able to get sons. So that's why they got Vyasadeva to actually come in, and he gave a boon that each one of them needs to come in, and then they would get a son. So that's where Vyasadeva comes into the whole pastime of how he actually is connected to Vidura. Now Vyasadeva, he wasn't always there in the kingdom, right? He would come in whenever his mom would ask for him, or whenever he would come in and instruct all the members of the Kuru dynasty. However, Vyasadeva was actually compiling all the Vedas and the Mahabharata. So you're right, Vidura actually lived Mahabharata. However, he wanted to hear about the topics again. And as he was going through the pilgrimage, he comes to his father and he asks his father, he inquires from his father that, tell me more about the transcendental topics. And it seems like, from this section that Vyasadeva spoke to him about Mahabharata, but he hasn't spoken to him about Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's why we see in text number 10 that I have repeatedly heard about these higher and lower statuses from the mouth of Vyasadeva, and I'm quite satiated with these lesser subject matters, but they have not satisfied me in the nectar of topics about Krishna. So it seems like he still hasn't heard about the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as he keeps, walking on his pilgrimage, he meets Uddhava. And Uddhava right now has just met Krishna. So Krishna has just spoken the Uddhav Gita to Uddhav. He has met Uddhava. Uddhava is in deep separation from Krishna. He is asking him the topics. He goes into ecstasy, but he is not able to answer all the topics. And then he redirects him to Maitreya, who also met Krishna just when Krishna was about to leave, right? And that's where Vidura then goes to Maitreya and asks these questions. It's a good question. I'm going to speculate. I don't know the answer. Does anybody know the answer? So the question is that at this point, at this juncture, has Vyasadeva already written the Srimad Bhagavatam? Has he already got instructions from Narad Muni? Yes, Prabhu. You have some insight? So I think this answers the first question, which was he lived Mahabharata, then why did he hear Mahabharata? So there's more to Mahabharata. So the other question was, at this point, Vidura is trying to ask Maitreya about the Srimad Bhagavatam. Has Vyasadeva already written the Srimad Bhagavatam? So we'll have to research that and come back to you. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So, yes. So basically, to your point that when you are in mode of goodness, we still are not able to understand the real nature of the self of a person. And we understand the nature of the self of the person when we actually transcend the mode of goodness. Now, the point here is, how do we actually understand the real purpose or the real position of the self? That can happen when we go into the transcendental activities. How can we do that? By Krishna Katha. When we actually hear Krishna Katha, we are actually in the presence of Krishna, both by reading the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are hearing from Krishna, and at the same time we're hearing about the qualities, his forms, his pastimes, about Krishna. And that helps us to transcend even the mode of goodness. But now to come to that point, what our acharyas say is that we actually need to be in the mode of goodness. When we are only in the mode of goodness and we are in the association of devotees, that's when we are able to transcend that mode of goodness. We cannot do that if we are in different modes, in the other modes like passion or ignorance. The mind is so riveted to what we're doing. Only when we're in the mode of goodness, we're able to actually transcend that and get the taste of Krishna Katha. And that's when we start to realize what is the true identity, what is our true purpose of the self. Hope that's okay. Yes. Yes. Yes, you got it. It's beautiful. Thank you. Transition of Katha. Oh, Katha. What is the translation of Katha? Story, commentary. Is that what you said? Topics. Topics of Krishna. Krishna Katha. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, last point. Yeah. Designations. That was beautiful. My day is successful now. Thank you. This was wonderful. I hope you all caught this, right? So Prabhu was explaining about how we are so riveted to this body, right? And we have so many designations, so many upadhis. So we feel like we're so connected in this material world, right? However, with Krishna Katha, we start to identify who we really are. Like we are the spirit spark. And what is our true identity as a spiritual being? And what is my relationship with Krishna? And those topics start to develop only when we actually go deeper into Krishna Katha. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. So we'll stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Wishing all of you a wonderful Krishna conscious day. Hare Krishna.